They abandoned her with a newborn in her arms, her ex-husband, her own brother, and the in-laws who once smiled at her wedding. To them, Alana Pierce was nothing but dead weight, another mouth to feed, another problem to forget. But 3 years can change everything. Hidden behind the tall iron gates of Cedar Springs, a woman they once mocked now walks across the marble floors of a $100 million dream mansion, a home she built in silence, brick by brick, while they whispered she'd never survive. They don't know it yet. They don't know the woman they left for, broke, is the one everyone's talking about now. They left her with nothing but a baby and a broken heart, unaware she was building a kingdom they'll soon come begging to enter. Hello, family. Welcome back. Before we begin, please click subscribe. Every single click helps us tell stories of courage and truth. And in the comments, tell us where you're watching from. Because when we share these stories together, we remind each other that even in pain, we can rise. The crystal chandelier blazed above the long dining table, its reflections shimmering across gold plates and polished glasses. Laughter filled the air, loud, fake, and heavy with pretense. Ethan Pierce, tall, confident, in his navy suit, tapped his glass with a silver spoon. The sound cut through the noise like a bell before a storm. Everyone, he said, flashing that well-rehearsed smile. Tonight isn't just about family, it's about a new beginning. Alana Pierce, his wife of 5 years, froze mid-smile. Her heart thudded in her chest. Around her, the Pierce family, her in-laws leaned forward, expecting another self-congratulatory speech about his business or promotion. But Ethan's eyes shifted toward the door. From the doorway stepped a woman in a shimmering red dress, Renee Cole, the company's new marketing executive. Every hair on Alana's neck rose. Renee's hand rested lightly on her stomach. Pregnant. A stunned silence spread across the table. Sylvia's lips curved into a satisfied smirk. So, this is the special guest, she murmured, eyes glinting. Ethan raised his glass, pretending not to notice the horror on Alana's face. To family, he said, voice steady, and to the child that will carry my name. The glass slipped from Alana's hand, shattering against the marble floor. No one moved to help her. Not her husband, not her in-laws, not even Darius, her own brother, who sat stiffly at the far end, eyes darting away in shame. Harold cleared his throat. Let's be civil, Alana. No need to cause a scene. A scene? Her breath shook. Inside, her chest felt like it was burning. She'd left her job, her dreams, her freedom believing in this family. She'd carried their name, their child, their weight. And tonight, they were celebrating her replacement. Sylvia leaned closer, voice low and cruel. Maybe now Ethan can have peace. You've done enough damage, don't you think? Every word landed like a slap. Alana stared at her plate, the scent of roasted rosemary suddenly sickening. Her fingers found the tiny silver locket around her neck, the last gift from her late mother, engraved with one word, rise. Ethan's arm wrapped around Renee's shoulders. She's moving in tomorrow, he announced. It's time for a change. Tears welled in Alana's eyes, but she didn't let them fall. Slowly she stood. Congratulations, she whispered, her voice trembling but sharp. Just remember, nothing that begins in cruelty ends in peace. The table went still. For a moment even Sylvia's smirk faltered. Ethan laughed it off, raising his glass again. Don't be dramatic, Alana. She turned to Darius, her brother, the one she once trusted. You knew? She asked softly. He looked away. Silence answered for him. Alana's chest tightened, a mix of betrayal and clarity. Her life, her love, her safety, it all ended tonight. She walked toward the door, heels clicking like clock, hands counting down. Behind her, Ethan's voice rose, cold and final. Don't bother coming back, Alana. You're nothing without me. Her hand paused on the doorknob. Then I guess I'll have to find out, she said. And as she stepped into the night, thunder rolled faintly in the distance, not from a storm, but from change coming. In the reflection of the glass door, Alana caught her own eyes calm, focused, unbroken. Somewhere deep inside, a promise whispered, he'll regret those words. The front door slammed so hard that the baby's cry echoed through the hallway. Ethan Pierce towered near the staircase, his face twisted with fury. I said pack your things, Alana. Tonight. The house that once smelled of roasted rosemary now reeked of whiskey and rage. Alana, still in her torn evening dress from the dinner, clutched her baby, Maya, close to her chest. Her voice trembled. "Ethan, please, she has a fever. Let me stay until morning, just until sunrise." Ethan's hands shot out, grabbing the suitcase she'd packed and hurling it across the foyer. "You think you can embarrass me and still sleep under my roof? You're lucky I don't call security to drag you out." From the top of the stairs, Sylvia Pierce watched with folded arms, silk robe gleaming under the chandelier. "Let her go, Ethan. She's been nothing but bad luck since she came here." "Mom, please," Alana's voice cracked. "I've done everything for this family. I cooked, cleaned, cared for your father when you wouldn't. What did I do so wrong?" Sylvia's reply came like a knife. "You existed. That's all it took." A shadow moved near the front door. It was Darius, Alana's own brother. His jaw clenched, guilt flickering across his eyes. He had been living in the Pierce guest house, funded by Ethan's generosity. "Alana," he whispered, "just go. Don't make things worse." She turned toward him slowly. "Worse? Darius, they're throwing your sister out with her baby in the middle of the night." He couldn't look her in the eyes. Silence answered her again. Renee Cole stepped out from behind Ethan, her red nails brushing his sleeve. "You don't have to justify anything to her," she purred. "Some people just don't fit in this world." Alana's fingers tightened around the doorknob. The cold night air hit her face like truth. Behind her, Ethan's voice rose again, sharp and final. "You're nothing without me, Alana. Nothing." She turned, eyes glistening but steady. "Then maybe it's time I find out who I am." The street outside was silent except for the hum of crickets. She stood barefoot on the porch, her suitcase half open, baby crying softly against her shoulder. A car passed in the distance, headlights flashing across her tear-streaked face. Inside, laughter echoed, Ethan and Renee celebrating with a glass of wine, as if she'd never existed. Alana walked down the porch steps, clutching her baby tighter, whispering a promise only the night could hear. "You'll never see us crawl again." Her heart raced, but her steps grew steadier with each one. The wind carried away her tears, leaving only resolve. She reached the end of the driveway and looked back once, not in pain, but in finality. The mansion's lights flickered behind her, like fading memories. In the reflection of a puddle, the moon glimmered beside her weary face. Somewhere out there, help waited a door she hadn't knocked on yet. The rain hammered against the cracked windshield as Alana Pierce pressed her forehead to the steering wheel of the old car she'd borrowed from a neighbor. Her baby, Maya, whimpered in the back seat, wrapped in a threadbare blanket. The fuel gauge blinked red. No gas, no money, no home. Lightning split the night sky, revealing a small sign ahead through the downpour. Cedar Springs Women's Shelter, a safe place. She stumbled out into the storm, clutching Maya tight. Her shoes sank into the mud as she reached the metal door and banged on it with the side of her fist. A woman with tired eyes and kind hands opened the door. "You're safe now," she said softly. "I'm Tina Brooks. Come in before you freeze." Inside, the air smelled of coffee and old books. Warmth hit Alana's skin, but her knees gave way. Tina caught her before she fell. "Easy," she said gently, guiding her to a cot. "You're okay. What's your name?" "Alana," she whispered, rocking her baby. "I just need somewhere to rest. Just for tonight." "You can stay as long as you need," Tina said, handing her a towel. "We've all had our just for tonight moments." At a nearby table, a young woman with a scar on her left cheek looked up from folding donated clothes. "I'm Nina Johnson," she said. "I came here a year ago with a black eye and $2. Now I work here. You'll stand again too." Alana tried to smile. Her voice was small. "He threw me out. My husband, my own brother helped him." Tina nodded knowingly. "You don't have to explain. Just breathe. We've seen every kind of storm here." As Nurse Carla checked on the baby's temperature, Alana stared at the flickering light above, the hum of the generator filling the silence. The world outside felt cruel and endless, but in this quiet, there was a strange comfort, a heartbeat of hope she hadn't felt in months. Later that night, she sat awake, watching Maya sleep. Her hands trembled as she whispered, "I won't let you grow up like this. I don't know how yet, but I'll find a way." Tina approached quietly, holding a steaming cup of tea. "Drink this, and rest." Alana looked up. "How did you do it? How did you start again?" Tina smiled faintly. "Someone believed in me when I didn't. A man named Howard Grayson. He funds this place quietly. Doesn't like attention, but he helps women build new lives. Maybe one day, you'll meet him." Alana's eyes flickered with curiosity. Why would a man like that care? Tina shrugged. Maybe he sees what we can't yet see in ourselves. The baby stirred, cooing softly in her sleep. Alana brushed a curl from her tiny forehead and exhaled, her fear melting into determination. For the first time in weeks, she closed her eyes with purpose, not panic. As Tina dimmed the lights, Alana whispered to herself, "If there's a man who believes in second chances, maybe he's the reason I came here tonight." If you're watching this and you haven't subscribed yet, please take a second to do it now. Every click, every share, every comment helps us keep telling stories that give strength to women and children who've been broken, forgotten, or silenced. When you subscribe, you're not just supporting a channel, you're standing beside survivors, saying their stories matter. Turn on your notification bell so you never miss a story that could change a life. And in the comments, tell us, where are you watching from, and what part of this story spoke to your heart. The wind whipped through the cracked windows of the courthouse parking lot as Alana Pierce tightened her coat around her trembling body. Ethan Pierce stepped out of a black SUV, his tailored suit untouched by the chill. He smirked when he saw her, the same cold smile that used to make her doubt herself. "You really came alone?" he said, his voice dripping with mock concern. "Couldn't afford a lawyer?" "I don't need one," she replied, lifting her chin. "The truth doesn't cost a thing." Inside, the family courtroom buzzed with murmurs. The fluorescent lights flickered, and the faint scent of old paper filled the air. Judge Elaine Monroe, a calm woman in her 60s with sharp gray eyes, adjusted her glasses as the case began. "Case of Pierce versus Pierce," she announced. "Custody hearing for minor child Maya Pierce." Ethan's lawyer, Trevor King, rose confidently. "Your Honor, my client is a respected businessman with a stable home and family network. The mother, on the other hand, has been residing in a shelter. Clearly, she cannot provide the same standard of care." Ethan smirked again, folding his hands. Alana stood, her fingers trembling slightly, but her voice clear. "Your Honor, that shelter saved my baby's life. The people there gave us food when he wouldn't. They helped when everyone else turned their backs." Trevor interrupted. "Objection. Irrelevant." Judge Monroe raised a hand. "Overruled. Continue, Mrs. Pierce." Alana took a deep breath. "I may not have money, but I have evidence." She opened a folder from her thrift store handbag, every page carefully labeled and dated. Unpaid hospital bills under his name, texts where he told me I was worthless, and photos from the night he threw me out. The courtroom went silent. Ethan's jaw tightened, his confident smile fading. Judge Monroe flipped through the documents, her expression darkening. "Mr. Pierce, is this your signature on these hospital statements?" Ethan shifted uncomfortably. "Those were old misunderstandings." The judge leaned forward. "You abandoned your wife and newborn. Then you attempted to frame her as unstable? That's not a misunderstanding, Mr. Pierce. That's cruelty." The gavel struck. "Full custody granted to Mrs. Pierce. Child support is mandatory. You are to stay 500 feet away from her residence." Ethan shot up from his chair. "This isn't over, Alana." She looked at him calmly. "It already is." As she walked out of the courtroom, the rain had stopped. The sky above was pale and open, like a clean slate. Alana stood on the courthouse steps, clutching the custody papers, the weight of her future suddenly lighter. Her reflection shimmered faintly in a puddle by her feet, not broken, but reborn. From across the street, a man in a gray coat watched her leave. Mr. Howard Grayson, silent observer of strength, noting her name as if it meant something. The mop bucket tipped over, water spilling across the marble floor. The echo of a child's cry followed, as Alana Pierce rushed to scoop her baby's bottle off the ground. Her hands trembled from exhaustion, 3 hours of sleep, 2 jobs, 1 dream barely keeping her standing. The clock on the lobby wall struck 11:45 p.m., another night cleaning offices after her day shift at the corner store. Nina Johnson, her friend from the shelter, wiped her brow across the hall. "Girl, slow down," she whispered. "You can't pour from an empty cup." Alana smiled weakly. "If I stop moving, I'll remember how tired I am." The elevator dinged open. A man in a tailored gray suit stepped out late 30 seconds, calm energy, gold badge clipped to his belt. "You missed a spot," he said lightly, pointing toward a streak on the glass door. Alana straightened, defensive. "Sorry, sir. I'll get it," he smiled. "Relax. I'm joking." He extended a hand. Liam Carter, property supervisor. "I usually leave before midnight, but I forgot my laptop." His tone wasn't mocking, it was curious, gentle. He watched her wring out the mop and asked, "You always this focused?" She paused. "Focus is all I have left." He crouched beside her. "Ever thought of starting your own service? You clean like you own the building." Alana gave a soft, tired laugh. "Own it? I'm just trying to survive the rent." Liam studied her for a moment. "Still, people who work like this don't stay small forever." He pulled a business card from his coat. "If you ever want a contract instead of a paycheck, call me." Before she could respond, the security alarm buzzed faintly, midnight shift turnover. Nina called from the hall. "Alana, let's go before the bus leaves." Alana tucked the card into her pocket, unsure if she'd ever use it. On the ride home, she stared at her reflection in the bus window, eyes weary but alive. Maya slept in her lap, small fingers clutching her mother's sleeve. Back at the shelter, the fluorescent lights buzzed softly. Mrs. Ellison, the elderly bank officer who volunteered on weekends, was sorting donation envelopes at a table. She looked up as Alana entered. "Long night again?" Alana nodded, placing Maya gently in her crib. Mrs. Ellison poured her a cup of tea. "When I was your age, I cleaned offices too," she said. "One day, a man offered me a contract instead of wages. It changed my life. Sometimes, opportunity comes disguised as exhaustion." Alana blinked, recalling the card in her pocket. "You really think so?" Mrs. Ellison smiled. "I know so." Alana held the small white card under the dim light. Liam Carter, Property Management Group. Her reflection shimmered on its glossy surface. Half fear, half hope. She folded it carefully, whispering to herself, "Maybe this is where survival turns into something else." As she drifted to sleep, the business card slid off the nightstand, landing beside Maya's tiny hand, two paths touching, one life about to change forever. The printer jammed again. Paper crumpled halfway through as Alana Pierce slammed her hand against it in frustration. The shelter's small office smelled of coffee and determination. "We can't afford to lose this chance," she muttered, tugging the stuck sheet out. Across the table, Nina Johnson tapped nervously on her calculator. "We need at least $100 for supplies. If we get that office cleaning contract, we can finally buy uniforms and maybe, just maybe, move out of here." The old landline phone rang. Alana froze, staring at it as if it were a ticking bomb. Mrs. Ellison, the elderly bank officer who had quietly mentored her for months, stood near the window with her clipboard. "Answer it, dear," she urged softly. "Sometimes the calls we fear the most change everything." Alana picked up the phone. "Hello?" A familiar voice came through, calm, professional. "This is Liam Carter. I reviewed your proposal. It's bold for a small startup. Meet me tomorrow at 10. Bring your partner. We'll see if you can handle something bigger." The moment she hung up, the room erupted. Nina screamed, "We did it!" Maya clapped her little hands in her playpen, mimicking the excitement. Mrs. Ellison smiled knowingly. "See? Faith rewards the prepared." The next morning, Alana stood in front of the sleek glass building that once seemed unreachable. She wore a second-hand blouse pressed to perfection, her hair tied back neatly. Her hands shook, but her heart stayed steady. Inside, Liam waited at the lobby with a clipboard. "Right on time," he said. "That's already a good sign." They toured the building. Floors gleamed under morning light. "You'd be responsible for 3 floors, including conference halls," Liam explained. "We need reliability. No excuses." Alana met his gaze. "You'll have neither excuses nor complaints, only results." He studied her face for a moment before nodding. "You remind me of someone I used to work for, a woman who built everything from scratch." "I think you've got that same spark," Nina whispered as they left the building. "Did we just get it?" Alana smiled, trying to stay calm. "Not yet, but we left a mark." That night, back at the shelter, the fax machine buzzed. Tina ran down the hallway holding a paper high. "Alana, it's official. You got the contract." Tears spilled down Alana's cheeks as she read the words. "Approved vendor Pierce and Johnson Cleaning Services." The shelter erupted into applause. Women hugged her, some crying, others clapping. For the first time in years, she didn't feel like a burden. She felt like a builder. She held Maya close and whispered, "Mommy's building us. Something real." Mrs. Ellison approached with a small envelope. "Your first deposit check," she said. "Use it wisely. Growth comes with new storms." Alana smiled faintly. "Then I'll learn to dance in the rain." As she placed the check into her worn wallet, she noticed a man at the far corner of the lobby, Howard Grayson, watching her with a knowing look, as if he had just found someone worth betting on. The library lights flickered as the rain pounded against the wide windows. A thunderclap rattled the shelves just as Alana Pierce dropped the stack of ledgers she'd been studying. Papers scattered across the wooden floor, profit sheets, client invoices, dreams written in ink. She knelt quickly, gathering them up while balancing baby Maya on her hip. The toddler tugged at her mother's braid and laughed softly, breaking the tension. "You think this is funny?" Alana whispered, smiling through exhaustion. From behind a bookshelf came a calm, deep voice. "It's good she laughs," it said. "Children don't smile unless they feel safe." Alana looked up. An older man with silver hair and gentle eyes stood before her, holding one of her fallen papers. He was well-dressed but unassuming, the kind of man people noticed without understanding why. "I'm sorry," she said, brushing dust from her knees. "I didn't mean to make a mess." He handed the paper back. "No harm done. But you've been here every night this week taking notes, studying business reports, reading property manuals. What are you building?" She hesitated, unsure if she should answer. "A future," she said finally. "Something stable for my daughter. I run a cleaning business. It's small, but we're growing." The man smiled. "Small things built with care grow stronger than large things built on ego." Tina Brooks, the shelter counselor, appeared from the far aisle carrying a box of donated books. "Ah, I see you've met Mr. Howard Grayson," she said warmly. "He's the man who funds this library and the shelter's scholarship program." Alana blinked. "You're him?" Howard chuckled. "Guilty, but I prefer listening to stories over being thanked for them." They sat together at the reading table as Maya scribbled on scrap paper with a broken crayon. Howard watched quietly as Alana outlined her business plan, new contracts, client referrals, her vision to hire more women from the shelter. Her hands trembled as she spoke. "I just need one investor to believe in me. Someone who won't take everything if I fail." Howard leaned back, thoughtful. "Most investors look for profit. I look for purpose. You clean buildings, but what you're really doing is restoring dignity." Alana's eyes welled up. "No one's ever said that before." He smiled gently. "Then let me be the first." He reached into his coat and slid an envelope across the table. Inside was a short agreement letter. "I'll invest 40% equity, but with one condition: every woman you hire gets fair wages and a path to independence." Alana's breath caught. "You'd do that for me?" "No," Howard said softly, eyes kind but sharp. "I'd do it because of you." The storm outside softened to a drizzle. For the first time in years, hope felt real, tangible, almost touchable. As Howard rose to leave, he said, "Build it strong, Alana. The world's going to test every brick." His cane tapped twice on the marble floor, steady, certain like destiny marking time. The sirens wailed outside the hospital as Alana Pierce pushed through the glass doors, her breath ragged, hands shaking. "Where is he?" she asked the nurse at the desk. "Howard Grayson, please, tell me he's awake." The nurse's eyes softened. "Room 408. But you might want to prepare yourself." Her heels clacked against the sterile floor. The closer she got to the room, the slower her steps became. Through the small window in the door, she saw Howard, pale against the white sheets, oxygen tubes trailing across his face. His cane leaned in the corner beside a folder labeled Grayson Trust. Inside the room, Liam Carter and Tina Brooks stood by the bedside. Liam turned as she entered. "He asked for you," he said quietly. Howard smiled faintly when she knelt beside him. "I told you the world would test every brick," he whispered. "You held it up better than I did." Tears filled her eyes. "Don't say that. You're not done yet. You said you'd see our headquarters open." He reached for her trembling hand. "I've seen enough. You made something worth leaving behind." He nodded toward the folder. "I will read it when you're ready. You'll know what to do." A weak chuckle escaped his lips. "Remember what I said? Build with purpose." And with that final smile, his hand went still. The monitor flatlined. A sharp gasp escaped Alana as the room filled with the long, steady tone of loss. She buried her face against his arm, whispering, "Thank you for believing in me when no one else did." Nina Johnson stepped forward, tears streaming down her face. "He changed everything for us." Liam placed a gentle hand on Alana's shoulder. "Then let's make sure his name lives on." Days later, under the soft glow of her office lights, Alana opened the Grayson Trust folder. Inside was a handwritten letter on thick paper. "Alana, if you're reading this, I'm gone. Don't mourn too long. I've left my shares to you and Maya. Take the company beyond cleaning, build homes, rebuild lives. You were born to lead, not survive." She wiped her tears and turned to the last page legal papers, transferring ownership of his investment firm, with one note scribbled at the bottom: "Dream bigger, always." In that moment, grief and gratitude fused into something powerful, a new fire. She looked out the office window, where her company vans lined the street, each painted with her new slogan, "Rise and Restore." The team gathered in the hallway: Nina, Liam, and several women from the shelter. "What now, boss?" one asked. Alana smiled faintly, holding the letter to her heart. "Now we expand." She turned toward the whiteboard where blueprints hung, a mansion outline drawn in bold strokes. "And this," she said softly, "will be our next project." As she switched off the office lights, the reflection of the mansion blueprint lingered in the glass, its Lakeview arches glowing under moonlight, as if waiting for her to bring it to life. The hammer crashed against the rotten wood, sending splinters flying across the dusty floor. Alana Pierce stood in the center of a decaying mansion, her hard hat slightly tilted, her boots coated in years of neglect. "Tear it down," she said firmly, voice echoing through the hollow hall. "We'll build it back better." Workers moved quickly, prying off warped panels and clearing broken glass. The air smelled of sawdust, rust, and rain-soaked history. Standing beside her, Liam Carter watched with admiration. "You sure about this place?" "It's a mess," he said, stepping over cracked tiles. Alana brushed the dust from a fallen chandelier. "So was my life once," she replied, "but look at me now." Her eyes lifted toward the high ceiling holes where sunlight spilled through like hope sneaking in. This was no ordinary renovation. It was a rebirth. The property overlooked Lake Ashbury, where the morning fog glided gently over the water. It was a mansion forgotten by time, exactly the kind of place she wanted to restore, not replace. A young woman with blueprints tucked under her arm entered. "Selena Moore," she said, extending a hand. "Architect, Liam says you're building a home, not a monument." Alana smiled. "Home first, symbol later." Selena unrolled the plans across a dusty table. "You've got vision, Alana. This design blends restoration, with resilience, arched windows for light, wraparound porch for reflection, and a marble foyer that leads straight to a Lakeview balcony. It screams rebirth." Alana traced the outline of the main hall with her fingers. "It's not about showing off," she said softly. "It's about showing what survival looks like." Liam leaned closer, studying the design. "You're investing millions into this project. You could build something new, faster." She looked up, eyes fierce but calm. "I don't want new. I want proof that broken things can stand again." They spent hours reviewing plans, cost estimates, structural challenges, and her bold timeline of 8 months. By sunset, the dusty mansion glowed orange under the falling light, like it was already remembering how to shine. Maya ran in from the porch, laughing, her little shoes tracking dirt across the blueprint. Alana lifted her into her arms and smiled. "This will be our home, baby. A place that says we made it." Selena gathered her notes. "We'll start foundation work next week. I'll send the first permit forms tonight." Liam nodded approvingly. "I'll make sure your permits go through. The council owes me a few favors." As the last workers shut the truck doors, the site grew quiet. Alana stood in the doorway, looking out toward the lake. Her reflection shimmered faintly in the water, strong, serene, and almost unrecognizable from the woman once thrown out into the night. She whispered, "You built your empire, Howard. Now it's my turn." The wind carried her words across the lake, almost like a reply came back. "Build it strong." As Alana locked the construction gate, a luxury car slowed across the road, its tinted window rolling down just enough for a man's eyes to watch her. The past was beginning to circle back. The flashbulbs exploded like fireworks. Reporters crowded the front lawn of the newly finished Pierce Estates, their microphones thrust forward, voices overlapping in chaos. Alana, over here. How does it feel to own one of the largest restored mansions in Cedar Springs? Is it true you built this empire from a shelter bed? Alana Pierce stood beneath the marble archway, wearing a crisp white suit that caught the afternoon light. Her expression was calm, poised, but her pulse raced beneath the surface. Maya clung to her leg, eyes wide as cameras flickered. From behind the crowd, Nina Johnson whispered, "You've gone viral. Every outlet's fighting for your story." Liam Carter stepped beside her, lowering his voice. "This kind of spotlight changes everything. You ready for that?" Alana smiled faintly. "I was born ready. I just didn't know it until now." The sea of reporters parted slightly as a tall woman in a navy coat stepped forward, notebook in hand. "Keisha Ray, Cedar Chronicle," she said warmly. "Your story's been trending since dawn. People are calling you the Phoenix of Cedar Springs. Can I get a quote for the front page?" Alana hesitated. She thought of Howard Grayson, the man who taught her that wealth without purpose was noise. She lifted her chin. "Tell them I didn't rise to prove anyone wrong. I rose to remind every woman she can rebuild from the ashes." The reporters erupted with questions. Cameras clicked. Behind her, the massive double doors of the mansion opened, revealing the gleaming foyer, crystal chandeliers, lakeview windows, and a plaque by the door engraved with 3 words, "Rise and Restore." Keisha stepped closer. "Is it true this mansion will serve as a foundation for survivors of abuse?" "Yes," Alana replied. "It's more than a home. It's a new beginning for others, just like someone once gave me." The crowd applauded. Nina wiped a tear quietly. Liam crossed his arms, proud but cautious. "You know this much attention won't go unnoticed," he murmured. "Someone's bound to recognize you." Alana's eyes flickered. "Let them. I have nothing to hide anymore." By sunset, the story hit every local screen headlines, hashtags, and videos of her speech spreading faster than she imagined. Her phone buzzed endlessly, with messages, some from supporters, others from unknown numbers she didn't dare open. Inside the mansion, she tucked Maya into bed, the soft hum of crickets outside mixing with distant applause from the lingering crowd. She whispered, "We did it, baby. We really did." As she walked to the balcony, the lake shimmered with gold reflections from the setting sun. For the first time, peace felt like more than survival, it felt earned. She exhaled, closing her eyes until her phone vibrated again. Unknown number. One message. "We saw the article. We're coming home." Her breath caught. The color drained from her face. The phone slipped from her trembling hand and landed beside Howard's framed letter on the desk, its words catching the moonlight. "The world will test every brick." The mansion gates opened with a sharp metallic groan. A convoy of black luxury cars rolled up the driveway like a storm cloud, returning to the sky it once darkened. Alana Pierce stood at the top of the marble stairs, calm but alert. She knew those cars, every dent, every plate number, every piece of the past they carried. The first door opened. Ethan Pierce stepped out, perfectly dressed, with a fake humility she could smell from yards away. Behind him came Sylvia Pierce, face painted in apology, and Harold, pretending age had softened his pride. From the last car emerged Darius, her brother, looking smaller than she remembered, eyes downcast. Ethan spread his arms. "Alana," he began with a grin that didn't touch his eyes, "you've done amazing things. We saw you on the news. The mansion, the company. It's unbelievable." Her expression didn't move. "You found time to watch between champagne parties?" Sylvia stepped forward, her tone syrupy. "Sweet. We made mistakes, dear. Families argue, but blood always wins in the end." "Blood?" Alana's voice sliced like glass. "You threw me out with my newborn. I begged you for one night of warmth. You called me bad luck." Silence. Even the fountain seemed to stop running. Harold cleared his throat, playing the patriarch. "We were wrong. Let us make it right. We can start again. Family business, family home. We can merge our lives and build something bigger." Renee stepped beside Ethan, smiling smugly. "It's what Howard would have wanted, right?" That name hit Alana like a blow. Her late mentor's legacy, spoken through a woman who'd once helped destroy her marriage. She stepped closer, voice low and steady. You have no right to say his name. Ethan's smile cracked. Look, we don't need to fight. Let's be reasonable. Think of Maya. She deserves to know her family. Alana tilted her head slightly. She already does. She sees them every day, the ones who chose her when you didn't. Sylvia sighed dramatically. Alana, enough of this pride. Forgiveness is strength. Forgiveness, Alana repeated slowly, is earned, not demanded at the gate. Ethan's charm faltered. His jaw tightened. You think this mansion makes you better than us? Alana met his glare with calm certainty. No, Ethan. It just reminds me what I survived without you. He stepped closer, lowering his voice. Careful, Alana. Don't forget where you came from. She smiled faintly. I don't. But you seem to forget you're standing on my porch. He froze. Sylvia's smile twitched. Darius finally looked up, whispering, Alana, please. I just wanted to say sorry. Her tone softened, briefly. Then say it to yourself. You'll need it more than I do. A guard approached quietly, whispering something to her. She nodded once. Thank you. Escort them off the property. As the gates closed behind their cars, Ethan's glare lingered through the glass, cold and unfinished. From her office window, Alana watched their cars stop just beyond the gate. Inside one, a flash of paper, a map of the mansion's floor plan. Her instincts whispered, they aren't done with me yet. The shriek of the security alarm sliced through the stillness of the night. Alana Pierce jolted awake, heart hammering. Red warning lights blinked across the mansion walls. From the baby monitor, she heard Maya stir softly in her sleep. She grabbed her robe and sprinted toward the security screen in her study. What she saw made her blood run cold. The camera feed showed a U-Haul truck parked in the driveway and 3 figures climbing out. Impossible, she whispered. They wouldn't. The front door handle rattled violently. Then a key turned. The lock clicked open. Ethan Pierce stepped inside first, flashlight in hand, his once polished confidence now desperate and dark. Behind him came Sylvia, muttering under her breath, and Harold, clutching a folder. Darius followed last, nervous and pale. Ethan barked, Hurry up, before security gets here. Sylvia pointed toward the grand staircase. Take the West Wing rooms. We'll claim this place before she can react. The deed's public property, now it's ours again. Alana appeared at the top of the stairs, calm but ice cold. You broke into my home, she said. Even for you. That's low. Ethan froze, caught mid-step. Alana, listen. This is a misunderstanding. We just wanted to talk. By breaking locks? She asked. Her voice was calm, but the tremor in her hands betrayed her fury. Harold stepped forward. You owe us, girl. This mansion was built on the Grayson name. Howard was part of our business before he died. She laughed bitterly. Howard left everything to me and you know it. You were too busy mocking him to notice he'd already written you out. Sylvia's tone turned venomous. You think this is over? You think that little empire makes you untouchable? You're still that same girl who begged us for bread. Alana's eyes flashed. Maybe. But the difference is this time, the world is watching. Ethan lunged forward suddenly, snatching the folder from Harold's hand and slamming it on the table. Sign this transfer, Alana. Give us part of the estate. And we walk away. She didn't move. Touch one more thing in this house, and you won't walk away at all. A faint beep echoed the hidden panic button under her desk. Outside, blue and red lights flared across the lawn. Detective Miles and 2 officers stormed through the gate. Hands where I can see them, Miles shouted. This is breaking and entering recorded on camera. Ethan's face drained of color. Sylvia screamed, You can't arrest us. This is family business. Detective Miles held up a tablet showing live footage from the security system. Family or not, you're trespassing, and we've got the proof. As the officers cuffed Ethan and Sylvia, Alana stood motionless, breathing deeply, her robe fluttering in the cold night air. She whispered to herself, The past just got evicted. As Detective Miles led them outside, Sylvia turned back, eyes burning with rage. You haven't seen the last of us, Alana. We still have friends in court. Alana's gaze hardened. Then I'll see you there. The gavel struck once, sharp as lightning. Court is now in session, announced the bailiff. Cameras flashed from the back row, the case already trending as the mansion trespass trial. Alana Pierce sat tall at the plaintiff's table, wearing a black suit, her hair pinned in a calm bun. Across from her, Ethan Pierce sat between his parents, their once proud faces now stiff with arrogance and denial. Mrs. Pierce, Judge Elaine Monroe began, her voice steady and firm. You're here today to present your evidence of unlawful entry and property damage. Proceed. Detective Miles stood first, projecting video footage onto the screen. The room fell silent. The large monitor played the mansion's camera feed, Ethan's voice echoing through the speakers. Take the West Wing rooms. We'll claim this place before she can react. Gasps rippled across the courtroom. Sylvia's hands trembled on her lap. Harold sank lower in his chair. The judge turned to Ethan. Care to explain this? Ethan stammered. It wasn't serious. We were confused. The property was family-owned, Alana's lawyer leaned forward. Correction, Your Honor. This mansion was purchased solely under Pierce Estates LLC, owned by Alana Pierce, and confirmed by the Grayson Trust documents. Judge, Monroe's eyes sharpened. So not only did you break in, Mr. Pierce, you did so with knowledge of ownership. Sylvia slammed her hand on the table. We were protecting our legacy. She stole everything from us. Alana finally spoke, her tone low and measured. Legacy? You left me with a baby and a hospital bill. You mocked me for being poor. I didn't steal anything. I built what you threw away. The room buzzed. Several jurors nodded. Even Darius shifted uncomfortably. The lawyer played the next clip, Ethan holding the transfer papers, shouting, Sign this, Alana, and we walk away. Judge Monroe's gavel struck again. Enough. The evidence speaks louder than any excuse. Sylvia began to sob, realizing the tide had turned. Harold muttered, This is ridiculous, our own daughter-in-law dragging us to court. Alana looked at him steadily. You stopped being my family the night you watched me beg at your doorstep. Silence fell heavy, like the weight of truth itself. Judge Monroe straightened her robe. This court finds the defendants guilty of trespassing, coercion, and attempted property fraud. Sentence: 1 year probation, community service, and fines totaling $250,000. Mr. Pierce, you are additionally ordered to attend anger management and maintain 500 feet distance from Mrs. Pierce and her daughter. Ethan slammed his hand on the table. You can't do this to me. I made her. Judge Monroe's voice cut through the air. No, Mr. Pierce, you broke her. She made herself. The courtroom erupted in applause. Cameras clicked. Alana closed her eyes, breathing in the justice she'd waited years to taste. As Alana stepped outside into the flashing lights, a reporter's question pierced through the crowd. Mrs. Pierce, how does it feel to finally win? She smiled faintly. Winning is easy. Staying kind after victory, that's the real test. But behind the cameras, one dark figure lingered near a car door, watching her in silence. Music swelled through the golden halls of the Pierce mansion, violins harmonizing under the glitter of chandeliers. Cameras flashed. Glasses clinked. The foyer that once echoed with emptiness now thrived with life and laughter. Alana Pierce stood at the top of the staircase in a sleek silver gown, her daughter Maya holding her hand. Mommy, is this all for us? The child whispered, eyes wide at the sea of guests below. Alana smiled softly. No, sweetheart. It's for every woman who thought she'd never stand again. The crowd quieted as journalist Keisha Ray approached the microphone. Ladies and gentlemen, tonight we celebrate not wealth, but resilience. From shelter floors to a $100 million legacy, please welcome the woman who turned pain into purpose, Alana Pierce. Applause thundered through the ballroom. Cameras zoomed in as Alana descended the staircase, each step measured, graceful, symbolic. She took the stage, hands steady, though her heart trembled beneath her ribs. 3 years ago, she began, voice echoing across the hall. I was homeless with a baby in my arms. The world told me I had nothing left. But pain is a strange teacher. It forces you to listen when no one else will. She looked toward the front row where Judge Monroe, Tina, Nina, and Liam sat smiling proudly. I stand here today not as a victim, but as a builder. This mansion isn't just my home, it's now a foundation for survivors, a place where broken beginnings turn into second chances. The audience rose to their feet, clapping, some with tears glistening in their eyes. Even Nina Johnson, once homeless herself, couldn't hold back emotion. You did it, Alana, she whispered from her table. You kept your promise. As the applause quieted, Alana's tone softened. For every woman watching, don't let their rejection define you. build something so powerful they have to watch from outside the gate. Cameras flashed. The moment was immortalized. The phoenix had risen fully from the ashes. Then came the toast. Liam Carter raised his glass. To Alanna Pierce, proof that faith and fire can rebuild any ruin. Everyone cheered. Laughter filled the air. The sound of new beginnings drowned the ghosts of the past. But as the celebration grew louder, Alanna's gaze shifted toward the glass doors. Outside, across the manicured lawn, blue and red lights flickered faintly in the distance. A police convoy slowed near the gates. A guard leaned toward her, whispering urgently, "Ma'am, the authorities just arrived. They say there's been a development regarding the Pierce's case." Her smile faltered just slightly. "What kind of development?" The guard hesitated. "They said you'd want to hear it in private." The music continued, the guests unaware. Alanna's hand tightened around her champagne glass as the doors slowly opened behind her, the air shifting colder. In the mirror's reflection, Alanna's calm face met her own eyes, strong, unshaken, ready. "Whatever this is," she whispered, "I'm not afraid anymore." Then, from the ballroom's edge, a faint voice called her name, a voice she thought she'd never hear again. Husband dragged his wife to court to steal her $500 million fortune, unaware. She owed the company he worked for what the judge did the moment I gave him. An envelope shocked him. He didn't just betray her. He marched her into a courtroom to steal everything she built, a fortune worth $500 million. In the morning, Elena Brooks steadied her breath and tucked a sealed envelope into her handbag. Her husband, Michael, stood at the plaintiff's table with a smile that felt like a knife. At his shoulder sat Vanessa, the consultant who became his shadow. Half of her company, Michael told the judge, and full control of the accounts. Those were the words that tried to erase years of Elena's work. Instead of honoring his vows, he weaponized them. Instead of love, he chose power. He thought she would fold under the weight of legal papers and public shame. But what he never knew was this. The fortune he tried to seize was tied by contract to the one place he could not touch: the company he worked for. Elena didn't bring rage to court. She brought records. She brought dates. She brought the truth her mentor taught her to keep. And inside that envelope was the clause that would turn his victory into a trap he built for himself. Sometimes the person who drags you to court ends up dragging their own name through the fire. This is not just a story about money. It is the calm strength of a woman who believed too much, the silence she chose instead of screaming, and the moment a judge read a single page and changed everything. Dear viewers, thank you for being here. If you watch without subscribing, it is like letting her voice fade again into silence. But when you click that button, you stand with every woman betrayed, every promise broken, and every survivor who chose to rise. Please, subscribe now. And in the comments, share where you're watching from. The sound of shattering glass broke the silence. A porcelain cup fell from Elena Brooks' trembling hand, coffee splashing across the white marble floor. She stared at her phone screen, heart pounding, eyes wet. For a moment, the world went still. The email subject read, "Notice of court summons, Brooks versus Brooks." Her husband's name, her name, together but against each other. She closed her eyes, chest heaving, then whispered, almost to herself, "He actually did it." The intensity hung in the air, sharp and cold. Then, like a woman forcing herself to breathe again after drowning, she reached for a towel and began wiping the floor. Her movements were slow, deliberate, the discipline of someone who built her life from chaos. Elena Brooks was 39, tall and poised, with eyes that carried both exhaustion and quiet strength. Every movement of hers felt intentional, the mark of a woman who had fought too long to ever waste time again. To the world, she was a self-made millionaire, the visionary founder of Brooks Innovations, a technology company built from a single software patent she created in her mentor's garage 2 decades ago. To herself, she was just a woman who once believed that loyalty was the same as love. Her morning routine never changed. Wake up before sunrise. Make black coffee, no sugar, no cream. Write 3 things she was grateful for in her leather notebook. Today her pen hovered over the page. She couldn't think of a single thing. A flash of memory flickered: a younger Elena, sitting beside Professor Richard Everlin, her mentor, who once told her, "You don't need luck, Elena. You need consistency. That's rarer than genius." She lived by those words. When he passed away 5 years ago, he left her the company they built together. But Elena didn't take it as a gift, she treated it like a trust. To honor him, she diversified, quietly investing pieces of her empire in smaller companies, diversified trust accounts, she'd call them, smiling when people teased to her about being overly cautious. No one knew those small stakes would later become her unseen armor. Her husband, Michael Brooks, entered the picture 12 years ago. He was charming, ambitious, and bold. A financial advisor with just enough confidence to make her believe he could protect her heart and her business. At first, he did. He was her balance. He'd bring her food when she skipped meals, text her reminders to rest, whisper that he'd handle the world for her so she could dream in peace. But as her empire grew, his laughter changed. It became sharper, louder. Sometimes when people congratulated her, he'd smile too long as if their praise stung him. Still, she loved him. She thought success would eventually make him feel secure. A knock on her home office door pulled her back to the present. Michael walked in, wearing a crisp shirt, cologne heavy in the air. He looked polished, calm, too calm for a man whose wife just got a court summons. "Rough morning?" he asked, pretending not to notice the broken cup. She looked up. "You filed it, didn't you?" He didn't answer. Instead, he walked to her desk, fingers brushing the golden frame that held their wedding photo. "It's not personal, Elena. It's business." Her throat tightened. "Business? You're suing your wife for half her company?" He sighed, like a man explaining something simple to a child. "Half our company. You built it during our marriage. That means it's joint property." She stared at him, the man she trusted with her passwords, her future, her heart. The man who once said, "I don't need your money, Elena. I just need you." She realized now maybe that was the first lie. He reached into his briefcase and pulled out a set of papers, cold, official, stamped. "I want us to keep this civil," he said, placing them on her desk. His tone was smooth, like someone closing a deal, not ending a marriage. "Sign these. It'll make things easier." Elena didn't move. She simply turned to the side drawer of her desk and opened it. From inside, she pulled a thin blue folder labeled Joint Access. He froze for a second, confused. She stood, placed it gently in front of him, and said softly, "You already have access to everything, Michael. My accounts, my shares, my life. What else could you possibly want?" He smiled, but it wasn't warm. "Control." Her eyes flickered with disbelief. Then came her voice, steady and heartbreakingly calm. "I never thought giving you access to my life would cost me my peace." For a long moment, neither moved. The silence was suffocating. Michael picked up the folder, flipped through the documents, every account, every key, every password listed neatly. His lips twitched into a grin, the kind of grin that made the air around him feel colder. Elena studied him carefully. She noticed it now, how his fingers tightened slightly on the folder, how his gaze lingered not on her face, but on the figures printed in black ink. It was the same look she'd seen once before, years ago, when he first stepped into her mentor's office and glanced at the company valuation sheet. The moment passed, but something inside her shifted. The coffee stain on the marble, the shattered cup, his emotionless face, all of it painted one truth she could no longer deny. She wasn't standing across from her husband anymore. She was standing across from a man preparing for war. As he turned to leave, he paused at the doorway, smiling faintly. "Tomorrow I'll have my lawyer contact you. Let's handle this like professionals." The door shut softly behind him. Elena exhaled shakily, the sound barely escaping her lips. Her eyes fell to the broken pieces of porcelain on the floor, small, sharp, and scattered. She knelt and picked up one shard, whispering to herself, "If he wants war, I'll give him silence first." She placed the shard on her desk beside the Chris folder, a quiet symbol of something fractured yet dangerous. Outside, the sound of Michael's car engine faded down the driveway. Elena looked toward the window, sunlight streaming in, and for the first time in years, her reflection looked like someone she didn't fully recognize. Then softly, almost as if to no one, she said, "If control is what he wants, he'll soon learn what it costs." The knife slammed against the cutting board, sharp, loud, deliberate. Michael Brooks wasn't angry. He just wanted her to know who set the rhythm. The sound cut through the soft music playing in the background, making Elena flinch slightly from across the kitchen. She looked up from her tablet where she'd been reviewing quarterly reports. "You're chopping too fast," she said gently, trying to sound casual. He didn't look up. "Maybe you're just watching too closely." The air turned tense, quiet but heavy. Dinner that night was supposed to be peaceful. Elena had spent the whole day in meetings, trying to pretend her husband's lawsuit wasn't real. The house was spotless, candles lit, tables set her silent effort to restore normalcy. But Michael didn't want peace. He wanted control. He poured himself a drink, eyes following her every movement as she sat down. "Still working?" he asked, gesturing toward her tablet. "It's just a few notes for tomorrow's board call." He smirked. "You really think you need to attend that? The company has people for that now. Let them handle it." "I like to stay involved," she said quietly. "That's your problem, Elena. You don't know how to let go." The words stung more than she wanted to admit. There was a time he would have been proud of her focus. Now every success she had sounded like an accusation in his tone. Years earlier, before her mentor passed, Michael worked under him at Everlyn Technologies, the same company where Elena had started. Michael had been ambitious, then the youngest analyst in his department, always trying to impress Richard Everlyn. He'd stay late, bring ideas, fight for recognition. Then came the promotion day. Everyone expected him to be chosen as the new department head. But Everlyn had instead picked Elena, quiet, analytical, disciplined Elena, because he saw something in her Michael didn't have: restraint. Michael had laughed it off at the time, saying, "Good for her." But later that night in their small apartment, he'd poured himself whiskey and muttered, "One day, I'll never have to ask anyone for approval again." That night was the first time Elena saw something dark flicker behind his eyes. Not anger at her success, but humiliation that she had what he wanted. Now, sitting across the table years later, she could still see traces of that same shadow. Their dinner began in silence. Michael ate quickly, movements sharp and impatient. "Did you talk to your assistant today?" he asked. Suddenly, Elena looked up. "Rachel?" "Yes, why?" He chuckled, shaking his head. "She doesn't know her place. Always calling, always reminding you of things. You don't need someone like that." "She's efficient," Elena replied, keeping her tone even. "I trust her." "Trust," he repeated, smiling without humor. "You use that word too easily." He reached for his glass again, eyes narrowing slightly. "Rachel looks at me oddly sometimes, you know. Maybe she forgets who runs this house." "She's just doing her job, Michael," Elena said softly, trying to keep her voice calm. But inside, something small and sharp twisted in her chest. After dinner, Elena carried the dishes to the sink. The sound of water running filled the room, the only thing drowning out the quiet tension between them. From behind her, Michael spoke again, his tone lighter but cutting. "You know, for someone worth $500 million, you sure don't act like it." She turned, startled. "What's that supposed to mean?" He shrugged. "You're still simple. No luxury cars, no private chefs, no mansion upgrades. You hoard your wealth like it's going to vanish." Elena frowned. "It's not about showing off. It's about protecting what we built." "We built?" he repeated, the words almost mocking. "You think you'd be where you are without me?" Her voice faltered. "Michael, no, say it. You think all your success is your own?" For a moment, the warmth in her eyes dimmed. She wanted to argue. She wanted to remind him of the nights he slept while she worked through dawn, coding software and drafting proposals. But instead, she whispered, "You help me, that's what matters." He smiled again, but it wasn't love. It was triumph. Later that night, Rachel called. Elena excused herself and answered in the hallway. "Ma'am," Rachel said quietly, "I reviewed the account summaries you sent. Did you mean to include the joint access documents? They have full clearance for your private holdings." "Yes, I gave them to Michael." Rachel paused. "Are you sure that's wise?" Elena laughed softly, though her voice carried a trace of sadness. "You worry too much. That's what love is, Rachel. Trust." Rachel hesitated, then replied, "Be careful, Mrs. Brooks. Some people mistake kindness for weakness." The line went silent. Elena stood in the hallway, the phone still against her ear long after the call ended. When she returned to the dining room, Michael was already clearing the table, or pretending to. The joint access folder was missing from where she had left it earlier. "Did you move the file?" she asked. He didn't look at her. "Just organizing. Don't worry, I'll keep it safe." The way he said it, calm, deliberate, sent a chill through her. Elena smiled faintly, forcing warmth into her voice. "Of course you will." But her hands trembled as she placed the dishes down. She didn't know why, but something inside her whispered that the folder wasn't in their home anymore. It was already being copied somewhere else. The blinds snapped shut behind him. Michael Brooks turned sharply, heart thudding as Vanessa locked the office door with a soft click. The sound was small, but it carried weight, the sound of something dangerous beginning. He stood behind his desk, pretending to focus on the spreadsheet glowing across his monitor. But he wasn't looking at numbers. He was looking at power, hers and his. Vanessa leaned against the wall, her voice smooth as silk. "You really should relax, Michael. You look like a man carrying too many secrets." He didn't respond at first. His fingers tapped against the desk, restless. She smiled knowingly and stepped closer. "You said you wanted to take control of your life. I can help you do that." The day had started like any other. The buzz of phones, the hum of the office, the smell of coffee mixed with ambition. But nothing about Vanessa Morgan was ordinary. She was new at the firm, hired 6 months ago as a business consultant, but everyone knew she was more than that. Sharp mind, sharper tongue. The kind of woman who could convince a man to jump and make him believe it was his idea. Her role in Michael's life began quietly, one conversation after another, during late nights in the office. She listened when no one else did, praised his intelligence, told him how underappreciated he was, and Michael, starved for validation, after years of standing in his wife's shadow, began to believe her. The first time they met was at a corporate networking dinner. Elena couldn't attend, she'd been sick that evening, so Michael went alone, eager to make an impression. Vanessa had walked straight to him, confident, radiant. "You're Elena Brooks' husband," she said, her tone light but curious. "Yes," he'd replied. "You've heard. Of her? Who hasn't?" She laughed softly. "But I've heard of you too, the man behind the genius." The compliment struck him like a spark. They talked for hours about business, ambition, and fairness. She listened intently as he complained about being the forgotten partner. Then she leaned closer, her perfume strong and deliberate. "You deserve more than being her shadow, Michael," she whispered. He laughed awkwardly, but she continued. "You know marriage law, right? What's hers is half yours. If you play it right, you could take control of everything you've helped build." Her words were casual, but they hit like a seed buried deep in his mind, one that would grow slowly, wrapping around his ego like ivy. Back in the present, Vanessa walked around his desk, her heels tapping softly. She placed a hand on his shoulder, fingers resting lightly but intentionally. "You've been collecting those documents I told you about?" Michael's throat went dry. "Yes, everything she owns. Access codes, partnership papers, the works." "Good." She smiled, brushing imaginary dust from his jacket. "You're learning." Most men would have hesitated. He hesitated now, though, voice low. "She trusts me, Vanessa. She gave me those documents because she believes I'd never hurt her." Vanessa's expression shifted, not cruel but calculated. "And that's exactly why you'll win, because she'll never see it coming." Michael swallowed. For the first time, a flicker of guilt passed across his face. "You think I could actually win this?" Vanessa leaned close, her voice almost a whisper. "With the right paperwork and my guidance, yes." The room went quiet, except for the faint buzz of a printer in the corner. On Michael's screen, folder names flashed open: joint access, corporate ownership, patent rights. Vanessa watched as he copied files to an encrypted drive, her reflection flickering across the glass. "Monitor. Remember," she said, "this isn't theft. It's justice. You've been under her name for too long." He forced a smile. "Justice. Right." Vanessa tilted her head. "You don't sound convinced." He looked up at her, his voice almost breaking. "She believed in me when no one else did." Her tone softened, though her eyes stayed sharp. "Belief doesn't feed a man's pride, Michael. Power does." As he shut down the computer, she stepped closer. Close enough that he could smell the faint scent of her perfume again. Something floral, intoxicating, dangerous. "Once this is over," Vanessa whispered, You'll finally have what you deserve. Half her empire, full control, and your own name back. He stared at her, unsure whether to feel thrilled or terrified. Then she leaned in and kissed him slow, deliberate, sealing the betrayal like a contract. When she pulled away, her voice was calm, confident. You'll thank me when it's over. Michael stood frozen, staring at the screen where Elena's financial world was now sitting on his flash drive. Outside the glass office walls, the city lights reflected across his face, one side bright, the other buried in shadow. He didn't know it yet, but that single act of copying those files had tied his fate to something much larger, something he couldn't control. The next morning, Elena will notice small inconsistencies, missing files, changed passwords, subtle signs that someone close is turning her world upside down. But instead of confronting, she will choose silence and begin to quietly watch. The door burst open before the meeting even ended. Elena Brooks looked up sharply as her lawyer, Daniel Carter, rushed into the conference room. His face was pale, lips pressed tight. Everyone in the room, board members, executives, assistants, turned in confusion. He didn't wait for permission. He simply placed a thick brown envelope on the table in front of her and said quietly, "I'm sorry, Elena, it's official." The air changed instantly. The hum of conversation died. The clicking of pens stopped. Only the soft buzz of the air conditioner remained. Elena stared at the envelope. Her hand hovered over it for a long moment before she finally pulled it open. Inside, the first line burned into her memory. Petition for division of marital assets, Brooks versus Brooks. Her husband's name above hers. The betrayal made real on paper. The entire room froze. No one spoke. The weight of it pressed down like gravity itself. She closed the folder, fingers trembling slightly, and pushed it aside. Her voice was calm, distant. "Everyone, please continue. We'll discuss the merger projections later." They hesitated, unsure whether to leave or stay, until Daniel gestured discreetly, and they began filing out of the room one by one. When the door shut and the silence returned, Elena's composure broke just a little. Her breathing hitched and her eyes glistened, but she didn't cry. Not yet. She looked out the window, the city skyline stretching endlessly beyond the glass. To everyone outside, she was a symbol of success, composed, confident, untouchable. But inside, her heart was cracking under the weight of a truth she'd avoided for too long. In that moment, her voice would later whisper in reflection, "I realized he never loved me. He studied me." 15 years earlier, a tiny apartment, flickering light bulb, laughter echoing off peeling walls. Elena and Michael sat cross-legged on the floor, sharing a bowl of instant noodles. Their first year of marriage poor but hopeful. He'd looked at her then, smiling that bright, ambitious smile. "If we ever make it big," he said, "we'll share everything, right?" She laughed, nodding without hesitation. Everything. That word had meant love to her. Partnership. Now it felt like a weapon. Back in the present, Daniel stood, quietly by the window, giving her space. He was in his early 40s, professional yet kind, the kind of lawyer who had seen enough broken marriages to recognize the look in her eyes. After a long silence, he said softly, "He's asking for half the company, Elena. He claims joint ownership under marital property law." Her gaze remained fixed on the skyline. "Half of Brooks Innovations," she murmured. "The company I built before he even quit his job. He's using your open access agreements, the ones you gave him." Her lips pressed into a thin line. "Of course he is." Daniel hesitated, then added, "There's more. He's filed for temporary control of several accounts, including your personal trust funds." Elena turned to face him then, her eyes sharp but steady. "He thinks this will scare me. He thinks it'll make you settle," Daniel replied. She picked up the summons again, flipping through the pages with slow precision, every paragraph, slicing a little deeper. Her hand paused over Michael's signature, bold and self-assured, like a man who thought he'd already won. For the first time, she allowed herself to whisper the thought she'd been avoiding. He planned this for months. Daniel took a cautious step closer. "Do you want me to file an immediate response? We can request an injunction to freeze joint accounts." Elena shook her head slowly, her expression unreadable. "No," she said quietly. "Not yet," he frowned. "Elena, if you wait too long," she interrupted softly, her tone almost gentle but chilling beneath the surface. "I want to see how far he'll go." She stood and walked to her desk, pulling out an old framed photo their wedding day. Her in a simple white dress, him holding her hand, both of them smiling as if forever was certain. She studied it for a long time before setting it face down. Her voice came out in a whisper, more to herself than to Daniel. "He once said we'd share everything. I just didn't realize he meant my peace too." Daniel lowered his eyes, sensing the quiet fury rising in her. He didn't argue. He only said, "You're sure about waiting?" "Yes," she said, turning back toward the window. "Let him think he's winning. I'll watch." The lawyer nodded slowly, though the worry in his eyes deepened. He gathered his files and headed for the door. As he reached the exit, Elena's voice stopped him. "Daniel," she said without turning around, "find out who's helping him." "Someone is." He paused, nodded once, and left. Alone again, Elena pressed her palm against the cold glass, her reflection staring back at her strong, silent, calculating. Somewhere deep down, the woman who once believed in love was gone. In her place stood someone else, someone watching, waiting. That same night, Daniel's quiet investigation will lead him to a name that doesn't belong in Michael's world, a woman whose influence and ambition run deeper than anyone suspects. And Elena, instead of confronting, will decide to let that woman reveal herself. The sound of the gavel cracked like thunder. "All rise." The courtroom filled with tension as everyone stood. Elena Brooks lifted her head slowly, face calm, expression unreadable. Across the aisle, Michael Brooks straightened his tie and smiled not at her, but at the reporters waiting to capture his victory. The judge entered, and everyone sat. This was it, the first day of Brooks versus Brooks. Michael leaned toward his lawyer, whispering something with a smirk. His voice was too low for most to hear, but Elena caught one word: easy. Her eyes flickered to the woman sitting quietly behind him. Vanessa Morgan, dressed in black, her expression perfectly neutral. To anyone else, she looked like a professional consultant taking notes. To Elena, she looked like the reason her marriage had died. She didn't stare long. She didn't need to. The betrayal had already taken shape in front of everyone: her husband, his lawyer, and the woman who'd coached him to take her life apart piece by piece. Michael's lawyer, Mr. Pesses. Howard rose first. He was sharp and confident, his words cutting through the quiet room. "Your Honor," he began, "my client, Mr. Brooks, has been wrongfully excluded from assets that are rightfully his. We will show that Mrs. Brooks concealed financial information, hid company shares, and moved corporate funds without disclosure." Gasps rippled softly through the courtroom. Elena didn't move. "Mr. Howard continued, for years, she's hidden behind the illusion of independence, yet the law is clear. What's acquired during marriage is shared equally. My client seeks control of 50% of the Brooks Corporation." The words hit like bullets, but Elena didn't flinch. Across the room, the judge nodded and turned to her. "Mrs. Brooks, do you wish to respond?" Her lawyer, Daniel Carter, stood calmly. "Your Honor, we will respond in full when the time is appropriate. For now, we ask to let the evidence speak for itself." Michael sat back, his confidence growing. He looked like a man who had already won. Every time his lawyer spoke, he nodded slightly, as if confirming a truth the world had ignored for too long. Behind him, Vanessa's smile barely moved, just the faint curve of satisfaction. He rehearsed lies so often, he began to believe them. Elena's voice echoed quietly in her thoughts. She watched as Michael projected the image of a wounded husband, betrayed by a powerful wife who hoarded wealth and affection. The jury looked sympathetic. The reporters scribbled furiously, but Elena knew something. None of them did. Every accusation he made today would help her destroy him tomorrow. 2 weeks earlier, late night, Elena in her office. Daniel at her side, whispering, "If we can prove he accessed corporate data illegally, we can expose his breach of confidentiality." Elena had smiled faintly. "I don't want to expose him yet. I want him to expose himself." She had quietly gathered everything, every email, every file transfer, every copied document. The evidence was ready. She just needed him to believe he was untouchable a little longer. Back in court, Mr. Howard presented spreadsheets, transaction histories, asset lists, all carefully selected and rehearsed. "Miss Seuss Brooks," he said mockingly, Can you explain why these funds were moved into secondary accounts under your maiden name? Elena looked directly at him, her voice calm and steady. Yes, those were diversified trust accounts established before my marriage. You'll find the date of formation on the bottom right. He glanced down. The date was 5 years before the marriage. The courtroom murmured. Michael's jaw tightened. Mr. Howard recovered quickly, clearing his throat. Even so, your husband contributed significantly to the success of these companies. His partnership deserves recognition. Elena tilted her head, her voice smooth. If recognition were measured by contribution, he'd have mine. But greed measures differently. For the first time, Vanessa's smile faded slightly. The judge called for a recess. Michael stood, walking past her table. As he passed, he whispered, "You're calm now. Let's see how calm you are when I own half your name." Elena didn't look up. She simply replied, quiet but cutting, "You'll own half of what destroys you." He frowned, confused, and walked away. When the judge returned, the final words of the day came from Michael's side. Mr. Howard stood tall, voice echoing, "Your Honor, my client seeks control of 50% of the Brooks Corporation." The judge nodded slowly. "We will proceed." A hush fell over the courtroom. Elena's face remained expressionless, her eyes distant, almost serene. Her thoughts whispered, calm and dim, deadly. He had no idea what 50% really meant. That night, as Michael celebrates his win, Elena will make her first quiet move, uncovering the buried truth about his employer, the company that unknowingly ties both their fates together. What she discovers will shift the entire war. The storm outside hit like a warning. Thunder cracked through the night as papers scattered across Elena's desk, caught by the sudden rush of wind from an open window. She hurried to close it, her silk robe brushing against stacks of files, her mind spinning faster than the storm itself. Her phone vibrated, a message from Daniel, her lawyer. "Daniel, I found something. You might want to sit down before you read this." Attached was a document. One glance at the company header made her freeze. Everlyn Group, her mentor's old company. The same company that had once saved her and now, somehow, connected to the man trying to destroy her. She sank into her chair, staring at the glowing screen. Her breathing slowed. Memories began to uncoil, one by one. A young Elena sat in a tiny office, head buried in her hands. Her startup had failed, debts piling high, her dreams slipping away. Then, an older man's voice had broken the silence, calm, kind, firm. "Every visionary stumbles, Elena. What matters is who helps you rise." It was Professor Richard Everlyn, her mentor. He'd taken a chance on her when no one else would. He invested through his holding company, Everlyn Group, saving her business from collapse. In return, she signed a lifetime agreement, a symbolic gesture of gratitude. Everlyn Group would forever own 20% of her company, and she would pay yearly dividends in his honor. He passed away 3 years later, but the agreement lived on unbroken, unspoken, sacred. She had often told people, "I'll always owe my mentor's company more than money." Now, those words returned to her like a prophecy. She opened Daniel's message again. Beneath the header was a single line, "Michael Brooks, Senior Financial Advisor, Everlyn Group." Elena's pulse quickened. Her husband, the man dragging her to court, demanding half her fortune, worked for the same company that already owned part of her business. Her eyes widened as the truth sank in. If Michael won his case, he wouldn't just be taking from her, he'd be taking from his employer. That was corporate theft, a direct violation of his employment contract. Her whisper filled the quiet room. So, he wants to steal from his employer without knowing it. The irony was almost poetic. She leaned back in her chair, the tension in her shoulders slowly easing as a faint smile crept onto her face. For the first time in weeks, she didn't feel cornered, she felt powerful. Everything he had built on lies was about to collapse on truth he never bothered to learn. Elena stood and walked toward the window again. The rain had softened, now, tapping gently against the glass. The world outside was still, reflective like her. She pulled out an old photograph from her drawer, one of her and Professor Everlyn, standing outside the First Brooks Innovations office. He was smiling, holding her first patent certificate. "I won't let your legacy be touched by his greed," she murmured. Then slowly she began gathering documents, her original contract, the dividend reports, and the signed debt agreement. She placed them neatly in a folder and labeled it in bold black ink, Everlyn Holdings Legal Reference. The folder would later become an envelope, and that envelope would become her weapon. The next day, Elena will meet with her mentor's former lawyer, the only man who knows the fine print of her debt agreement. That meeting will shape the perfect trap for Michael, one sealed not with vengeance but with law and irony. The printer spat out pages like gunfire. One after another, legal documents slid into the tray, their words heavy with finality. Elena Brooks stood beside the desk, hands steady, eyes cold. It was midnight. Her study glowed under a single lamp, casting long shadows across the walls, shadows that moved when she did, as if echoing her thoughts. On the desk sat an unmarked brown envelope, her weapon, her proof, her justice. The phone rang once. She picked it up before the second tone. "Mrs. Brooks?" a man's voice asked, firm but familiar. "Mr. Halden," she said softly. "Thank you for meeting me this late." Arthur Halden, her mentor's former lawyer, had been retired for years. He'd served the Everlyn Group faithfully, a man known for his honesty and his loyalty to Richard Everlyn, the man who built both her career and her conscience. "I've reviewed the old files you sent," he said. "I think I understand what you're planning." "Then you know why I can't lose this," she replied. There was a brief pause before he spoke again. "You won't lose. But I must warn you, when you reveal this, there's no going back. It'll destroy him completely." Elena's gaze fell to a framed photo of her and Michael from happier years, smiling, holding hands, the illusion of love. She didn't look away. "He destroyed himself," she said. "I'm just turning on the light." Half an hour later, the front door opened to the quiet footsteps of Mr. Halden. His white hair glowed faintly under the hallway light, and in his hands, he carried a single folder sealed with a faded Everlyn Group emblem. "This is it," he said, placing it on her desk. "The original clause. Everlyn's company policy still stands. Your husband's contract includes it." Elena opened the folder carefully. Her eyes scanned the page until she found the line she needed. "Any attempt by an employee to claim personal ownership of assets belonging to or associated with Everlyn Group clients constitutes grounds for immediate termination and legal forfeiture." It was the missing piece, the key that turned betrayal into justice. Michael wasn't just trying to take what was hers. He was trying to take what belonged to his employer, his mentor's legacy. Elena closed the folder and looked up, calm but resolute. "He wanted to win the war in court," she said quietly. "I just had to hand him the gun he loaded himself." "Mr." Halden nodded slowly, eyes filled with respect. "Richard would have been proud of you." When he left, the house fell silent again. Elena sat down at her desk, sliding the papers into the brown envelope. Her movements were deliberate, slow, almost ceremonial. She melted a stick of red wax and pressed her seal into it, the Everlyn crest a reminder of where it all began. The wax cooled, hardening like her heart. She whispered to the empty room, "Tomorrow he'll meet the truth he's been pretending not to see." She set the envelope in her briefcase and turned off the light. The lamp went dark, but the red wax glowed faintly in the moonlight, a small, silent promise of what was to come. The next morning, the courtroom will fall into an eerie silence as Elena hands that same envelope to the judge. What lies inside will not just end Michael's lawsuit, it will erase his career, his pride, and the illusion that he ever had control. The gavel hit once, sharp as a thunderclap. Court is now in session. The room was packed. Cameras lined the back wall, reporters hunched over notepads, and the low murmur of whispers faded as the judge took her seat. Elena Brooks sat motionless at the plaintiff's table, hands clasped on her lap. She looked calm, composed, almost serene, but her stillness carried weight, a storm hidden behind control. Across from her, Michael Brooks smiled like a man who already saw victory. He adjusted his suit jacket and leaned back, eyes glinting with arrogance. Behind him, Vanessa Morgan sat quietly, her posture perfect, face unreadable, but her gaze darted to the brown envelope lying beside Elena's lawyer. Michael didn't notice. He was too busy admiring himself. "Your Honor," began Michael's attorney, Mr. Howard, "after weeks of deliberation, evidence, and testimony, my client only asks for what he is lawfully entitled to, his rightful half of Mrs. Brooks' company." He paused, turning dramatically toward the jury. For years, he supported his wife's ambitions, contributed ideas, and sacrificed his own career to build her empire. But she rewarded his loyalty with deceit and exclusion. We ask for fairness. 50% of Brooks Innovations. A ripple of sympathy moved through the courtroom. Elena didn't blink. Michael leaned toward her table and whispered with a smug grin, "This is what justice looks like, Elena. Fair, isn't it?" She didn't answer. Her gaze remained on the envelope. The judge turned to Elena's lawyer, Daniel Carter. "Mr. Carter, final statement?" Daniel stood, his tone calm but firm. "Your Honor, my client has been painted as deceitful, but facts are stubborn things. Today those facts speak for themselves." He turned slightly to Elena. She gave a slow nod, a quiet signal. Daniel reached into his briefcase and pulled out the sealed brown envelope. The wax seal glimmered under the courtroom, lights red, unbroken, deliberate. He placed it gently on the table in front of the judge. "Inside this envelope," he said, "is a document that clarifies ownership, employment, and contractual violation, all tied directly to the assets in question." The judge frowned slightly. "And what is it exactly?" Daniel stepped back. "Proof." Michael chuckled, shaking his head. "More drama, Elena? Another delay tactic?" His voice carried arrogance, but beneath it, a thin edge of nervousness slipped through. Elena finally turned to face him. Her voice was soft, but it cut like glass. "You wanted the truth, Michael. It's about time you saw it." The judge broke the seal and unfolded the papers. For a long moment, the courtroom fell into complete silence. The judge's eyes moved back and forth across the pages. The sound of turning paper filled the air like the ticking of a clock. Then, slowly, the judge looked up. Her tone shifted, cool, authoritative. "Mr. Brooks," she said evenly, "are you aware that Everland Group owns 20% of Brooks Innovations, the company you are attempting to claim half of?" Michael blinked, confused. "What? No, I wasn't aware." "And are you also aware," the judge continued, "that you are currently employed by Everland Group?" The color drained from Michael's face. His mouth opened, but no words came. The judge tapped the document. "According to this contract, any attempt by an employee to seize or personally profit from assets tied to an Everland Group client constitutes immediate termination and immediate termination. Forfeiture of benefits. Mr. Brooks, you've just violated your own employment agreement." Gasps broke through the courtroom. Michael stumbled to his feet. That's not possible. She set this up." The judge's expression hardened. "Set it up? You built it yourself? You signed the contract? And you filed the lawsuit?" Elena's eyes stayed fixed on him, calm, steady, the quiet strength of someone who no longer needed to raise her voice to be heard. Vanessa's pen fell from her hand. Her face lost all color. Without a word, she rose from her seat, smoothed her skirt, and quietly walked out of the courtroom. Michael didn't even notice she was gone. He was frozen in disbelief, his career unraveling in front of the cameras. The judge continued. "This court will not only dismiss your claim, Mr. Brooks, but I strongly suggest you prepare for a legal response from your employer. We're done here." The gavel hit again, final, echoing, absolute. Elena stood slowly, gathering her papers. She turned to Daniel, who gave her a nod of quiet satisfaction. Michael, pale and shaking, reached out a hand toward her. "Elena, wait." She looked at him for the first time, with no anger, no pity, only truth. "You wanted half of everything I had, Michael. Congratulations. You just lost everything you had." She walked away as cameras flashed, her heels clicking in rhythm with his collapse. Outside the courtroom, as Michael faces reporters in humiliation, he will make one final desperate attempt to speak to her not for love, but for survival. And in that moment, karma will finish what justice began. The courthouse doors slammed open. Michael Brooks stumbled out, chased by the flashing chaos of cameras, questions, and murmured judgment. His name, once spoken with envy, now echoed with pity. He blinked under the blinding light, eyes frantic, searching through the crowd. "Elena!" he shouted, his voice cracked. "Elena! Wait!" She was already halfway down the steps, calm, composed, her lawyer by her side. The same press that once called them the power couple of the decade now formed a wall between them. He pushed through it, desperate. Please, Elena, I didn't know. I swear I didn't know. Reporters turned their cameras to capture every word the fallen husband begging the woman he betrayed. She stopped. The air around them seemed to still. Slowly, Elena turned. The noise faded, the crowd's whispers dulled into silence. All that existed in that moment were two people and the ruins of what once was love. Her expression was unreadable, not cruel, not cold, just quiet strength. Didn't know what, Michael? She asked softly. That I'd survive you? He took a step closer, his voice trembling. I thought you'd never find out. I thought, that's the problem, she interrupted gently. You never thought I'd think. The words hit harder than any shout. Michael froze, eyes wide, lips parting but no sound coming out. Around them, cameras clicked, like the ticking of fate. A court officer emerged from the doorway, calling out, Mr. Brooks, you've been served. Michael turned sharply. Two uniformed men approached, handing him a stack of papers, notice of asset seizure. He glanced down, scanning through the lines, his face draining of color. All accounts frozen. All holdings suspended. Employment terminated. Pending legal action from Everland Group. His knees gave out. The papers fluttered to the ground, scattered by the wind, the final remnants of his empire. Lawyers nearby whispered quietly, one of them muttering, That's it. He's finished. Michael tried to stand but couldn't. He reached out not for balance, but for mercy. Elena, he gasped, his voice breaking. I didn't mean for it to go this far. I just wanted what was fair. Please, help me. She looked down at him, the man who once stood, taller than her, the man who believed love was ownership. There was no anger left, only clarity. You wanted half my fortune, she said softly. Instead, you lost your soul. Her words lingered in the air like a verdict. Cameras flashed wildly as Michael's hands trembled, clutching the courthouse steps. His face was pale, his suit wrinkled, his confidence gone. For the first time in his life, he looked small. Elena stepped forward, close enough that only he could hear her next words. I didn't destroy you, Michael. You just finally met yourself. He lifted his head, tears streaking his face. Please, I have nothing left. Elena's gaze softened, not in pity, but in understanding. Then maybe now you'll learn what love without greed feels like. She turned away and began walking down the steps. Behind her, the cameras captured the image that would become tomorrow's headline, The Kneeling Man. Michael Brooks, once a name of ambition, now on his knees before the woman he betrayed, his fortune frozen, his career erased, his pride shattered. Elena reached the last step and paused. The wind caught her hair, lifting it gently as if the universe itself exhaled relief. She looked back once, just once, her eyes soft, not cruel. For a moment, the woman she used to be flickered behind the strength she'd become. Then she turned and walked into the sunlight. Behind her, Michael collapsed fully, surrounded by the very noise he once craved. Flashes, questions, whispers, all now meaningless. He wanted half my world, her voice echoed in reflection. But in trying to take it, he lost his own. That night, Elena will stand alone in her home, quiet, peaceful, holding a single letter from Everland Group, thanking her for protecting their legacy. But as she looks out the window, a faint shadow will remind her that victory never comes without cost, and some debts are never fully repaid. The morning light poured through the glass walls, soft and golden. For the first time in months, Elena Brooks' office felt alive again. No whispers of betrayal, no storm of doubt, only quiet, steady peace. The faint hum of the city below sounded like a heartbeat returning after silence. On her desk lay two things: a copy of the court's verdict and the brown envelope that had changed everything. She opened the drawers slowly and placed them side by side, not as trophies, but as reminders. One symbolized justice, the other, patience. Her voice came softly, reflective and calm. I gave him everything once, my love, my loyalty. The envelope wasn't revenge, it was truth wrapped in patience. She ran her fingers across the embossed Everland seal, tracing its edges like an old memory. A small smile touched her lips. She wasn't the same woman who once believed love meant surrender. She was someone tempered by loss, strengthened by silence, reborn through restraint. The sunlight caught the corner of a new letter resting on her desk. She opened it, a crisp white card with gold lettering, Everland Group Partnership Renewal Approved. Her mentor's legacy lived on. Her empire was stronger than ever, not because she fought harder, but because she learned when not to. She stood, walking to the window. Outside, the world moved on, people rushing, living, building. She whispered softly, repeating her mentor's words as if they were prayer. Those who build with love will always outlast those who take by greed. A gentle wind swept through the room, as if in answer. The photo of her and Professor Everland shifted slightly, the corners catching the light. She smiled again, not out of victory, but understanding. In the end, revenge hadn't freed her. Truth had. As the camera pulled back, the brown envelope remained in focus, sealed, quiet, timeless. Because sometimes, the most powerful justice isn't loud. It's written, signed, and left to rest in peace. A soft chime from her phone, an unread message. Unknown sender. The subject line reads, "He's trying to contact you." She doesn't open it. She only looks at it once, then closes her eyes. Some stories, after all, are meant to end in silence.